Dear friends, hello, my name is Sofya Dorinskaya. I am a psychiatrist and the head of the Sofya Dorinskaya Center for Medical Information. Today I want to continue the series of videos about nutrition. And it so happened that we touched a bit on the topic of nutrition and beauty, and there were a lot of questions. How? What? Because people want to be healthy and want to be beautiful. But since I am, after all, a psychiatrist and not a dietitian, today I want to look at this topic from my own perspective. So from the point of view of a psychiatrist, first of all, before diving into the depths of glossy magazines and trying to compare your body to those bodies that are currently being promoted to us by fashion, I want you to remember that there is a fundamental difference. There are three body types. These are hypersthenics, normosthenics, and asthenics. Hypersthenics are people of short stature, usually with very broad shoulders, a very strong bone structure, short legs, a short neck, and powerful arms. And generally they tend to look more like a square. Normosthenics are individuals whose physical bodies were highly celebrated and idealized during the Renaissance era. These are what we consider the correct so-called classical Greek proportions. It's more like, I don't know, something that is much closer to a balanced rectangle shape. And asthenics are people. They are taller than average, their proportions are narrower than everyone else's, their shape is slimmer than that of other people. They have longer legs, a longer torso, a long neck, longer arms, and so on. And I just want you to understand that in the modern world, the bodies of asthenics are simply the ones that are most visible and talked about, if I can put it that way. For one simple reason. Now we have social networks, now we have the internet, a huge amount of information that reaches people. And in that world of high fashion, with designers, photographers, beautiful photos, I can say that it's simply easier. It's easier to create a beautiful picture and easier to show well-fitting clothes on asthenic bodies. And that's all there is to it. They're not smarter, not healthier. There's no other underlying reason here. Unfortunately, I have to mention this. Most designers nowadays are people of non-traditional sexual orientation. They simply just don't like it, the typical female body. And from their own perspective, and based on their very own ideas, they gravitate toward physical bodies that have absolutely no relation to the female body at all. But from the standpoint of professional suitability, they are unfit as professionals, as designers, because, to be honest, they don't know how to dress ordinary people, ordinary human bodies that walk the streets. And it's very important to be fully aware of this, to understand it very clearly. So before your daughters or you, young women who are watching me, plunge into the depths of these diets, this beauty, this desire to match the glossy magazines, you simply need to look at your body, stand in front of the mirror, and honestly assess whether you can achieve that glossy image. In reality, if you have an asthenic or hypersthenic body type, you will never in your life become a normosthenic or hypersthenic. You will never in your life become an asthenic. It's simply impossible by nature. And here you'll have to stand out with unearthly beauty, knowledge of 15 languages, the highest level of professionalism, impeccable manners, and so on and so forth. You just need to understand that your happiness lies somewhat in a different direction. At the same time, anybody can be dressed beautifully. So please consult with professionals, with designers, with tailors who know how to do their job and know how to do it well. That's all there is to it. There's really nothing else to it here. There's nothing more magical, mysterious, or enigmatic about it. Everything is quite simple. And the second point I would like to discuss is severe neuroses and psychoses related to eating. In general, neuroses and psychoses can be about all sorts of things. Some people have a severe neurosis about whether or not they've locked the door. They go back 15 times and keep pulling the door handle. Someone else has a severe neurosis about whether they've turned off the iron. And then there are simply neuroses and psychoses related to food. In one of the comments, someone sent me a link to a video, apparently so I could watch it and understand. Well, I don't know what exactly I was supposed to understand, whether I was right or wrong or something else. So I opened this video and there's a man sitting there who, quite seriously, shows a piece of meat on a plate and says, "If you want to kill your husband, if you're tired of your husband, here's some meat. Boil it for him and feed it to him. This meat contains bacteria that cannot be destroyed by any amount of boiling, and in fact they will never be destroyed. And if you feed him this meat, he'll get infected." Next, he puts this meat aside, takes, well, butter, or rather there's a piece of butter sitting in a butter dish. So if you're tired of your husband, just spread some butter on a piece of bread for him. And then, quite seriously, his blood vessels will just, they'll keep narrowing, and in the end, he'll die. Then he takes a loaf of bread and starts talking about it some more. There he shows sugar. Guys, if you're watching a video like this, you need to understand that there are several stages of slow progressing schizophrenia or paranoid schizophrenia. Several stages: paranoidal, paranoid, and paraphrenic. So the first stage of paranoid schizophrenia, the paranoidal stage, is characterized by very convincing delusions. That is, the persuasiveness lies in the fact that, generally speaking, you look at the person and it seems like they don't mix up their words, their cases in sentences agree, and they seem to be following some kind of thought. Although if you listen for a long time, probably their thought won't actually lead anywhere. And it seems like everything is fine. And in order to understand that a person is hallucinating or in general just spouting nonsense right in front of you, you simply need to start digging into the essence of what they're saying. There are no bacteria on planet Earth that cannot be destroyed. Such bacteria do not exist because they are a form of life. And you immediately want to ask, wouldn't it make sense to just pick up a microbiology textbook and read about the temperatures at which different bacteria die? The claim that if a person eats butter, then they... So, the idea that blood vessels constrict. This is just utter nonsense, comrades. If you don't eat fats, and if you don't eat carbohydrates, or if you don't eat animal fats, you are guaranteed not to absorb the fat-soluble group of vitamins. You will have major problems, but nothing terrible will happen to you. If in the morning you eat a sandwich with butter on which you put 2 generous spoonfuls of red caviar, I simply wish for you to have breakfast like this. And go ahead and kill your relatives like this. Kill in quotation marks, of course. This can be especially beneficial for elderly people. Just cut off the crust of the bread, which a person might not be able to chew and could simply hurt themselves with their gums. So, guys, there is such a thing as induced psychosis. So right now, the amount of this madness, the number, of these crazy people who say that not eating is the right thing, that food kills, that fasting brings rebirth, the amount of this madness right now is just enormous. Honestly, I think there was quite a lot of it before too. It's just that now, with this openness, with social networks and the internet, where absolutely anyone can express their opinion. And if a person is experiencing health problems, as I mentioned, if you have hypo or avitaminosis, you feel unwell, you go to doctors and they can't find anything. And the physical pain, this kind of disseminated, scattered pain throughout the body, it brings a person to a state of severe, perhaps neurosis. And yet formally the person is healthy. Next, or the person's environment is so oppressive that they've simply been worn down, to put it bluntly, by constant devaluation regarding their appearance, their body, their behavior, or the way they live their life in general. You're not married, or you still haven't gotten married. In short, there are all sorts of situations. So it's just an oppressive environment. The next reason why a person might fall for it, getting hooked by someone like that, getting attached, and taking everything at face value, this often comes from a certain intellectual decline and overall emotional immaturity. Well, let's be honest, there are people who their intelligence is reduced, of course. They don't have a diagnosis of intellectual disability, but there is a certain mild degree of debility present. That's the first thing. And second, there's this kind of emotional immaturity. In other words, the person lacks both the intellectual resources and the emotional resilience to withstand a certain amount of pressure, to be able to analyze the information they're given, or to get through some kind of oppressive situation. And they become easily led. Wherever they're taken, that's where they go. So, is this the next reason why a person gets caught on the hook? By these kinds of storytellers. So what needs to be done to stop resonating, to stop being on this wave of induced psychosis, to stop falling into this psychosis or already having a severe neurosis about food? You need to understand that this, I'll repeat it once more, is simply one of the topics of neurosis that exists. But first you need to stop communicating with such people by any means. You don't need to watch these videos. You need to somehow distance yourself from that oppressive environment that devalues you, crushes you, belittles you, and in general, in any way, simply destroys you, your personality, and simply you as an individual. In other words, you must stop communicating. Before that, of course, you need to realize that this is happening to you. I think my videos help some people. They really help people come to their senses and say, oh my God, this really is nonsense. Next. If you really feel unwell, get a medical checkup. Now, there are doctors who are starting to remember and study the science of vitaminology, who are recalling the signs of hypo and avitaminosis. And find such doctors, let them look at you from this perspective and in general help you address your hypo and avitaminosis. Dear mothers, I have a very important message for you. Please, before you ever start telling your young daughters, if you are someone who does this, how fat she is or why she shouldn't be eating so much, please stop and think about the impact. How unattractive she is, before you ever even think about doing anything like that with her. Your most important and sacred duty is to carefully teach your young daughter exactly how to choose her own supportive circle of people and true friends. This is the most important skill in a woman's life, and frankly in a man's as well, that allows people to maintain their mental health, to live a happy life, to achieve their own goals, to find their purpose and move toward it. So your sacred duty is not to tell your daughter that her measurements are wrong. Excuse me, this is your daughter. The body you gave her is the one she has. But your sacred duty is to teach your child to distinguish between inappropriate people, those who cannot communicate properly, who should not be part of your child's social circle, and people who have a positive influence, who help them achieve their goals, who encourage them, who help them get through life's difficulties, who always notice something good in this girl. So this is the most important skill for your daughter to be happy, to find a good husband, and to feel comfortable. And let's be honest, for her to be beautiful as well. After all, there are no unattractive people, no matter what they look like. Happiness makes anyone beautiful. So teach her this. And happiness largely depends on the people who surround you. And finally, I would like to say once more at the end, let's, in a nutshell, define that very beauty, that very attractiveness, the one we all want to achieve and which in principle is never completely attainable. That is, you need to know your body, you need to know how to dress it, you need to have good manners, pleasant manners, you need to work on the tone of your voice, have a good education, and speak proper Russian. It's wonderful if you speak several other languages as well. You need to know the cultures of different countries, and then these different points of view greatly enrich your own life, including your perspective on yourself, how people dress, what accessories they use, and so on. That is external attractiveness, the things that people accept. All these things consist of quite a few elements and quite a lot of effort, primarily mental effort. And now, just a few simple things. Try to grasp this whole picture and contrast it with one simple mindless action. To be beautiful, you have to starve yourself or go on diets. And you will realize that this is just one big nonsense. It's just as foolish as giving neuroleptics and antidepressants to people who feel that something is wrong, who are in a bad mood, or to children who are somehow lagging in development. As I've already said, in life there is no single big solution, something minty, tasty, but singular, that solves all problems. That's nonsense. So starving yourself for the sake of beauty or health is the same ordinary foolishness that never leads to happiness, health, success, endurance, intellectual development, or anything else. It leads to illness and death. I wish for you to turn off all these silly channels and all the so-called gurus who tell you how terrible food is. I wish for you to take some time to truly relax and unwind. Take a long walk. Enjoy a nice, nourishing meal. And in general, begin focusing more intentionally on improving your overall attractiveness, always paying close attention to the people around you, and being very selective and thoughtful about choosing your social circle. This was Sofya Dorinskaya with you. All the best. Goodbye.